Hi, my name is Tiana Karamayas and I'm a Cavoodle puppy coach and breeder for Noodle Way and River City Puppies. As a coach, my philosophy is simple. A Cavoodle should always complement your lifestyle, not complicate it. And this is the foundation to everything I teach. For almost the past decade, I have been working in the breeding, training, grooming, and veterinary sectors of the small animal industry. I've also been raising Cavoodles for the past 16 years, so I have definitely learned a thing or two about the breed along the way. Now this podcast is all about Cavoodles. Raising Cavoodles, training Cavoodles, grooming Cavoodles, breeding Cavoodles, and how to shape the behavior of a Cavoodle puppy. So if you're a Cavoodle parent or you are looking at adding a Cavoodle to your family soon, then this podcast is for you. New episodes will be released each Tuesday morning, and you can follow me across all social media under the name @OodleWay for more tips and advice on Cavoodles. Thanks for tuning in. Hello, welcome back to episode 27 of the Cavoodle Coach podcast. My name is Tiana Karamayas and I'm your host. Today I want to talk about the weight of Cavoodles, and in particular whether or not you should be asking a breeder for the expected weight of the puppies before you place a deposit. And this is an interesting topic for me because I breed Cavoodles, and so I get this question a lot. And every time I get this question, I always say to the family, oh, you know what? This isn't really the question that's going to determine how big your Cavoodle is going to be. And they're always like, well, what do you mean? And so I thought I would share it on this podcast episode. So the very first thing I want to say is, obviously when you're getting a puppy, everyone has a certain size in mind of what they're looking for. So for Cavoodles, we have toy Cavoodles, which are our smallest Cavoodles. Then we have miniature Cavoodles, which are slightly bigger Cavoodles. And then we have our standard Cavoodles, which are very much more rare because that would involve mating a standard poodle with a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel. And that's a really big size difference. And usually that's not going to be recommended by any kind of reproduction specialist just because the size difference is so big. So usually we're talking about toy Cavoodles and miniature Cavoodles. The actual sizes of these Cavoodles in terms of weight, it kind of varies, the guidelines. Usually toy Cavoodles can be between sort of 3 kilos to, I would say, about 7 kilos. And then we have our miniature Cavoodles, which would be, 7 kilos to about 15 kilos. Again, this is a rough guideline because the weight isn't what determines whether the dog gets the label toy Cavoodle or miniature Cavoodle. It actually has to do with whether it's a toy poodle or a miniature poodle parent that the puppy came from. So that kind of is what determines what label your dog gets rather than the actual size. But that there is a whole other topic I can get into. And if anyone wants me to get into the breeding side of things and the labeling of Cavoodles, whether toy or miniature, let me know. Send me an email, hello@oodleway.co. I'll have it linked below my email address, and then I can do a podcast episode talking about that. But I want to talk about, why asking about the expected weight of the puppies isn't relevant when it comes to your decision about whether to get a puppy from a certain litter. So the very first thing we have to keep in mind is weight is variable, and Cavoodles are very fussy eaters. And then we have some Cavoodles, and it's very rare, and unfortunately, most of the time you get a Cavoodle that's fussy rather than one who loves food. But sometimes you do get a Cavoodle who loves food, and they can be on the chubbier side. And so if you ask a breeder what's the expected weight of the puppies, it's really just doesn't give you a clear idea of how big this puppy is going to be because, if your puppy's underweight, they're going to look a lot smaller. If they're at the correct weight, fantastic. But they can also be overweight, and that can make them look a lot bigger. In addition to this, the length of your Cavoodle's hair and their coat significantly changes how big they look. Cavoodle hair, they have hair, not fur. Fur doesn't grow long. Hair grows as long as you let it, and Cavoodles have hair, so if you don't groom them, the hair will continue to grow. And so the fluffier your Cavoodle is, the bigger they're going to look because that hair adds inches to the size of their body, literally inches, because it puffs out and fluffs out and your dog looks significantly bigger. So the weight doesn't really determine how big your dog looks. One of the main things is how much hair they have on them. And we can also look at things like throwback genes. So Cavoodles are a fairly new breed. They are still a crossbreed. The breed pool hasn't been perfected yet, where we can breed Cavoodle to Cavoodle and have a reliable outcome of what the dog looks like, the size of them and their temperament. That's a work in progress within the breeder community. And when that's achieved, they will then become purebred dogs. But at the moment, they're still crossbreeds. And what that means is, since it's still such a new breed, we don't have that reliability yet on the things like size, things like looks to a certain degree. We can do DNA testing for looks that can determine how they're going to, their coat colors, their coat genes, the coat furnishings, things like that. And what this essentially means is, with Cavoodles, you can get a throwback gene from a few generations ago, from whether a bigger Cavalier, King Charles Spaniel, or a King Charles Spaniel, which is different, or a miniature poodle as opposed to a toy poodle. And what this means is, if you go to a breeder and they are selling toy Cavoodles because the mum is let's say the mum is a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel and then the dad is a toy poodle, the puppies will be called toy poodles. But if we went and tried to trace back the generations of the dog, you might find that 2 generations ago, there was a miniature Cavoodle in the mix, and then your puppy might pick up that gene from 2 generations ago and significantly outgrow their litter mates and be the biggest puppy of the litter and not be what we consider a toy Cavoodle. So the predictability isn't something that we can rely on yet as a breeder, because the breed simply hasn't been around long enough to make that gene pool small enough and reliable enough to be able to predict what the puppies are going to look like, which is what you see in all of these purebred dog breeds today. Like, for example, if someone bred a golden retriever, you know exactly what they're going to look like, the size they're going to be, and the temperament they're going to have, because it's been around for, I'm not exactly sure how long it's been around, but significantly longer than Cavoodles, and the gene pool is now refined so that you can just breed golden retriever to golden retriever every single time and know exactly what you're going to get. Whereas with Cavoodles, we still have, Cavalier King Charles Spaniels crossed with Poodles. We have Poodles crossed with Cavoodles, Cavoodles crossed with Cavalier King Charles Spaniels, Cavoodles crossed with Cavoodles, second generation Cavoodle crossed with third generation Cavoodle, and multi-generation Cavoodles, and all these different things, because it simply hasn't been around long enough to get that predictability of that gene pool to just have a Cavoodle crossed with a Cavoodle and getting consistent results in the puppies. So throwback genes is always something to consider, which means if you're getting a puppy, obviously one of the things you want to ask is, well, do you know how big the parents were of the parents of my puppy, and the grandparents and the great-grandparents? Can you trace it back? And breeders who have been breeding for, a significant amount of time, and breeders who take their job very seriously and are invested in the quality of their puppies, they usually will be able to give you a bit of a heritage background to the parents of the dog, and they'll be able to trace it back maybe 1 or 2 generations. But again, Cavoodles are such a new breed that we can't trace it back 10, 15 generations, because there simply is no such thing as 10th generation Cavoodles yet. There is no such thing as that. So it's still unpredictable. Breeders can give you a bit of an idea if they're a good breeder who is trying to better the breed rather than just doing it for backyard breeding. But yeah, still those throwback genes can come into place, and you might get a throwback gene from a few generations ago, and that can definitely impact the size of your Cavoodle. So what we have there is that the length of your dog's hair is going to change the size of them, whether they're underweight, the correct weight, or overweight will change the size of them. And then throwback genes can always come into play, which can, to change the way that your Cavoodle is going to look. And so what I like to say is when families come to me and they say, Tiana, I really want a toy Cavoodle. How big do your Cavoodles get? What I like to say to them is I say, well, look, based on this dog's past litters, so based on, let's say, Chelsea's past litters, we can expect her puppies to get between X and Y kilograms. However, things like the size of your dog, how much they weigh, whether they're underweight or overweight, is going to change how big your dog is. How long their coat is going to change how they look in your home. There could be throwback genes that come into play from generations ago that can't be traced because Cavoodles are such a new breed. So I say to them, what actually is a better question to ask is, how tall is the dog? And this is something that we can say with a little bit more predictability, because the actual height of your puppy, of your adult cavoodle, is actually the factor that's going to change how they look in your house. And the height of a cavoodle is measured from the base of their paws to the tops of their shoulder blades. And depending on, the parents, they could be under 30 centimeters, over 30 centimeters, over 40 centimeters tall, over 45 centimeters tall. Those are going definitely into the miniature cavoodles. And this is what's going to change how your dog looks in your house, because it doesn't matter how much hair they have on them. It doesn't matter how much they weigh, whether they're overweight or underweight. The height of your dog will not change as an adult. And if you ask a breeder for an estimated height of the puppy, this is going to give you a much better idea of how much space the dog is going to take up in your house. And you're going to be able to visualize a lot better how big this dog is, because the height makes the difference. And the reason why I'm so passionate about this is because, like I said, cavoodles, there's no predictability yet in the breed, and sometimes cavoodles can also have longer legs and sometimes they have shorter legs. And you can have a cavoodle that weighs the exact same as another cavoodle, yet the height difference is 10 centimeters, and the taller dog obviously looks a lot bigger, but their weight is the same. And the reason why I can say this is I have two cavoodles. I have Nessie and I have Chelsea, and Nessie at the moment, she just got desexed. She got desexed a year ago, and when dogs get desexed, sometimes they start piling on weight a lot more easily. So she is a little bit on the bigger side at the moment, but we're on a diet. We're doing a lot more exercise. She weighs more than my other dog, Chelsea, yet Chelsea is about, I would say, between 5 to 10 centimeters taller than Nessie. And even though Chelsea weighs less than Nessie because of her extra weight that she's holding on to at the moment, even though she weighs less, she looks like a bigger dog simply because of the height, and she takes up more space. So the height of your cavoodle is what's going to determine how big they look, not so much their weight, because the weight is so variable. There's so many factors that come into it, and it's just not, a reliable factor to go off if you want to know how big your cavoodle is going to get. So with all that said, if you are getting a cavoodle, you're wanting to get a puppy, and you have a certain size in your head, rather than saying, I want a 4 kilogram cavoodle puppy when they're older, an adult dog, ask yourself, okay, how tall do I want my dog to be? And then get out a ruler and measure from the ground. Maybe you want one that's 30 centimeters tall. Well, you can simply put a ruler on the ground and just see, okay, if they're going to be 30 centimeters tall, this is where their shoulder blades are going to be. And obviously their head is going to be taller than this, but this is how big my puppy's going to be. And you can look at it and you can go, actually, I wouldn't mind one that's a bit bigger than this, maybe 35 centimeters or maybe 40 centimeters. And that's going to help give you a much better understanding of how big you want your puppy to be. And then you can go to a breeder and you can say, hey, I want a puppy that's going to grow to be X amount of centimeters tall. Is your upcoming litter going to give puppies this tall? Do you think that's a possibility? And then the breeder can look at this height and go, you know what? In the past litters, we've achieved that height. The mum and dad are this tall. The likelihood of getting a dog this tall is quite good. Yes, we most likely will have a puppy who's going to get that tall. Or they can say, actually, no, my puppies probably won't get that tall. And then you can go, okay, that's all right. And then you can look to another breeder. However, if anyone knows me, you'll know that I do not recommend picking your puppy based on looks or height. I recommend going based on the breeder's curriculum program and the training they're doing. That's going to be much more important than the look of your dog, especially if you get a puppy who's full of anxiety with a stressed temperament versus a puppy who is well balanced and just very calm. That's going to be much more better in your household than one that is 5 centimeters shorter or taller, for example. But if you're tossing up between two breeders and you absolutely love both of their programs, then you can look into things like height, and then you can go, okay, which one's most likely going to give me the puppy that I want in terms of height, and then you can go with them. So I hope this episode has given you some food for thought, and hopefully if you're a family looking at getting a cavoodle, you're about to go get a ruler and measure out how tall you want your puppy to get. And I just hope this has given you another perspective, another way of understanding the breed, and understanding that cavoodles aren't yet a breed that has been bred enough to have a predictable gene pool and outcome in all the dogs. So it's really hard to just go based on weight, because you can have throwback genes. the weight of the dog makes a difference. How much hair they have makes a difference. So I just personally think that asking for the height is going to be much more influential and much more, beneficial to achieving what you want in your Cavoodle than asking them for their weight. Okay, so that's it for today's episode. I really hope you enjoyed it. And I am going to go and not wake up my little puppy. I'm going to wait for him to wake up, and then we're going to go on a walk together, which is very exciting. I always look forward to our walks. So I will leave you, and I will see you next week in the next episode. This has been your Cavoodle coach, Tiana Karamayas. I will see you later. Bye.